especially when it comes to like the family dynamic, you have to kind of wait for everybody to get on the same page sometimes. And that's a little bit frustrating when you've got 4 different personalities, 4 different ways of being. I actually had this conversation with my husband last night about, he wants me to do one particular thing. And he's like, it's easy. And I'm like, that's not easy for me. That's a lot of work for me. That's like a lot of thinking. That's a lot of processing. And I'm not able to do that right now. Can I talk to you in the morning after I've had my coffee? And it's just being able to recognize that in each other. And he totally gets it because he's also a coffee drinker in the morning. And it's hard because you want to solve it right now. Trust me, I get that. Like there are so many times where I'm like, I need to bite my tongue. They are not able to hear me right now, but then I have to pick my moment later. And I keep it in the back of my mind. And I think, okay, when we're ready, we'll get there and we'll be able to have the conversation. It gives me thinking time as well. So I can think about a good way to like approach it. So it's not like, boom, and this is what I think is wrong. So here's how we're going to fix it. But where it's like, but it's more like a dialogue of like, okay, these are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? And that's really hard to do.
So, Janine, I'm putting myself in the shoes of a teenager, which isn't hard for me because I'm more like in the middle school age, I think. And one of the things I wonder about is how do they start to identify these areas for themselves? Because like I said, reading for me, but I don't know that I without this conversation, I don't know that I would have immediately said, oh, reading is a coping mechanism but I can see it in like my kids. But as a teen, they're usually not wanting me to tell them anything, let alone what their coping mechanism is, right? So how does a teen, or how can we as a parent support our kids in figuring out what the coping mechanisms are and how to support them if they haven't read your book yet, or as they're reading the book?
Or maybe they have the book, but they want to know how to use it.
Right. So I would say, I also think it's important for teenagers to have like other adults in their lives that are trusted adults, that are people who they can talk to, because I think it's easier sometimes for teenagers to talk to somebody else, not even necessarily a therapist, but like an aunt or a grandma or just somebody else in the family who gets them and isn't in that parental role of having to set the rules and having to let you know when you broke curfew and having to say you can't go out. And it just takes away that the competition of like trying to have the conversation about emotions and also trying to parent. It's very hard to do both of those things. Like if you're trying to establish the rules and trying to have that emotional connection, it's hard to do it. So it's really helpful to have a village around you. It's really helpful to have other people who can help you and support you. I often find my teenagers tell me they want to talk to me, and then they'll talk to their parents. Like they'll say, can you help me figure out how to say this to my mom? Can you help me? I said something and I shouldn't have, or I lied to my mom. I don't know what to do. And like working through that with them is really interesting to watch and see, because a lot of times they just need like a little push. They just need a little bit of support, a little bit of help, because they do value the relationship. And I think people don't realize, maybe parents don't always see it because there is a lot of conflict in teen years. They do value you and they do love you and they do want to have a connection with you. They just don't always show it the nicest way because they're teenagers, right? And so I think for parents, I think it is actually kind of going back to what you were saying, Cecilia, about like, I don't want to have the downtime. I think the downtime is kind of important because that way you can start to explore with them. Do you like cooking shows? Do you like going on walks? Do you like books? Do you like reading manga? Do you like anime? What do you enjoy? What do you love? What are your passions? To have those conversations, and that's that basis of then figuring out what are the things that I can do when I'm having big emotions, because that's how you really deal with it. In the like when you're dealing with big emotions all the time, you got to figure out ways that are safe to get it out. Maybe it's drawing, maybe it's poetry, maybe it's rapping, maybe it's, it could be drawing or making music. There's so many different things, but we need to have an opportunity for us to have those conversations with our kids and explore it with them. Let's try cooking, let's try baking, let's try listening to this podcast and seeing what you think.
I like that, especially because it's an opportunity to connect with them. Like not only is that an opportunity for you to like try to explore it with them and for them to explore to find that for themselves, but like it becomes connecting. At least that's how it's been for us. Our daughter recently has decided that baking is something she's really interested in, cooking, and so it's been nice like cooking with her. Cecilia's been baking with her, and playing even if it's like watching their favorite YouTube show or something like that, like to do something like that that can be connecting, and it's an opportunity to start maintaining and deepening or shifting that relationship that we have with them as teens. I've noticed that it's changed, like it continues to change, and I'm trying to figure it out because that's what I do. I try to figure things out, and so that's why I was wondering about like how do I figure out what their coping mechanism is, and it sounds like a lot of it is just like looking at what's going on and what calms them.
Yep, absolutely. It's you sort of have to play detective. And it's really interesting to watch over time because, I now have a middle schooler and I didn't before. And so this is an interesting sort of transition, and seeing what she's doing and how she's coping and what she's saying to me and what she's not saying to me, and figuring all of that out and just watching her grow. It's really interesting to figure out what works. And I've seen it with my clients over time too. Sometimes they'll be like, I can't believe I said that to you. It was so embarrassing. And I can't believe I was thinking that way or doing that. Can you believe I used to do that when I was in middle school? That's so embarrassing. And so they notice that they have changed too. What works for them changes over time. And what works when you're in middle school may not work when you're a senior in high school. Let's be honest, it's a very different world. You're a very different person.